Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to episode 3 of the Mountains and Leadership podcast. Mark, how are you doing today?
I'm doing well. How you doing, Patrick?
I'm doing great, man. So, we are talking about entrepreneurship this week. And what does that actually mean? Really, we're going to go through, the truth, the hard truth, the good and the bad and the ugly and the pretty and everything else related to entrepreneurship today.
We can speak to the ugly well.
What's that?
We can speak well to the ugly.
Yeah, we can speak well to the ugly. It's not always what everyone puts out there on their little TikToks and their YouTube videos about how great it is. It's hard work. But we're going to be going through that today, and we're going to talk about the top 10 things that all entrepreneurs should be aware of or they should know. So, Mark, we were talking outside the podcast, and you actually had some experience. You've got a patent, I think, and you've done some business work in the past.
I have a patent. I was never able to sell it, but I do have a patent.
But you have some entrepreneurship experience, yes, right? So talk to us about that.
What's funny is that I got out of college, and, I always wanted to, I'm not a clock puncher. I'm really not. And this is quite a while ago. I may be dating myself a little bit, but somebody approached me about joining a network marketing group that's out of Ada, Michigan. Sold a lot of soap. They told me I could make a lot of money.
You were a soap salesman.
Amway.
Okay.
So
Amway.
I learned a lot of business principles from there, and learned how to get over my fear of sales, because a lot of the data you're going to read is one of the skills that being an entrepreneur really, really needs is sales. You have to be able to sell yourself, your company. You have to sell everything. People are like, well, I'm just going to start a business, but I can't sell. If you can't sell, don't start a business at all. I've also had a staffing company that ran for 11 years. Best year of revenue ever was $2.3 million. We did a really good job with that, running in the Rocky Mountain region. Shut it down in 2008.
Why'd you shut it down?
Competition, just kind of squeeze of the competition. And then I was also still working in real estate and mortgage at the same time. So I just decided to concentrate my efforts and skills over to one side. And then,
Gotcha.
And then I started up a Christian bookstore with the proceeds from that in 2007. Well, I guess that was late 2006. The Christian bookstore that was in our town was going out of business.
Mm-hmm.
I was able to pick up the remaining inventory, their POS systems, their shelving, everything for 10 grand. Went and rented another space, 10,000 square foot. Had some guys come in. We kicked tail on this thing, remodeled it, got the permit, put everything in there. Coffee shop, floors, great tables built out of aspen, came from the mountains right here in Colorado. Seating areas, we were open at 7 every morning. Everything. We were holding Bible studies there. We had a church that was meeting there on Sundays. It bankrupted me in 11 months.
Oh, man.
11 months.
The stats on entrepreneurship, it's something like, what is it? 90? I think it's like in the 90 percentile range that businesses fail within the first, 18 months?
18
is
months,
the stat on that, I believe. So 11 months. So you make all this money from your staffing agency.
Right.
And then you say, okay, I'm going to plug that into something else. And that was the Christian bookstore.
Right.
All the while you're doing real estate and finance. So you've got 3 ventures going at the same time.
Correct.
And you decide, okay, I'm stretched too thin. I'm just going to do the bookstore and do the finance and the real estate. Mm-hmm. Bookstore just goes belly up 11 months later.
Yeah. And, it was, I guess you can say 2007 is the beginning of the recession.
Oh, sure.
Right before everything hit. It was when Amazon was starting to get really, really big. And then I really I was just excited. I got way too emotional about this one. I was like, we're going to do some awesome work here, right? We're going to make an impact. We're going to make a statement. I did not do my research. I didn't look at my competition. It was in a smaller town, 110,000 people in a 20-mile span. And then, it was a feeder community for within a 2-hour radius from there. But I just didn't do my research to even know that the 2 largest churches in town had just as many labels on a shelf in their bookstores as I had in mine. So, my eyes were opened wide when a woman came in on a Monday morning and was looking at the Caruso t-shirt rack. And I said, hey, is there a size you're looking for? I can check in the back for you if you need it. She says, no, I bought this shirt for my son yesterday at church.
Oh,
great.
Yeah.
I didn't know I was supposed to be in business competition with churches.
So look at your market niche, right? Look at the market, look at the people around you, and you can kind of see what's going on. Like lesson learned. Yeah. I see these people they put all this stuff out, and they show themselves driving around in these fancy sports cars, and they're doing all their stuff. And that's not reality, folks. You go into business for yourself. You're doing it all. I mean, you're from the floor up, you're building, and it's going to be hard work, right? But that's why you have to be called to something bigger than yourself if you're going to do that, right?
Right. Your why has to be huge.
Obviously not saying that's not what you were doing. It's just the lessons learned of looking at the market around you was a thing for you at that time, right? So you've gone on to do other things. You've got like what is it? Do you have a car? Is it a car?
I have a dealership out of Wyoming.
Up in Wyoming.
Up in Wyoming, yeah. We're just doing some flipping of cars up there, buying them that need a little bit of fixing, some salvage title, some non-salvage title,
and then selling them for a profit.
The jury's still out on how that one's going to go.
But now you know your market, you know your niche. I'm sure you went in probably the first thing you did, huh?
Right, exactly. And yeah, I need to be able to keep my costs down and everything else. And the costs aren't staying low enough for it to be. I didn't do a long-term commitment on a property. Mm-hmm. I went under contract on a property to purchase with a 12-month pre-occupancy. Mm-hmm. So in other words, I'm leasing it to make sure I can prove this out before I even go into buying the property.
Before you make that financial investment, exactly. You've been given a 12-month window to do some due diligence.
Right.
Super smart.
So I'm able to do a true on market test, market analysis, see if all the systems that I was able to put in place are working as effective and efficiently as possible. And you can get really, really blinded, and which, with the bookstore I did. This one I'm not so blinded about. You have to weigh out how much of you have a bleed going, how long you can bleed that for.
For the viewers, explain what the bleed is.
It's the amount of capital you have to invest in before it starts being self-sufficient. Mm-hmm. So when I speak about the bleeding, I'm talking about being in the red, I'm talking about being in the negative for profits mm-hmm. On a monthly basis, month over month basis. So when you are looking at those numbers and you have to assess things, you just have to really be a realist and look at those things. I also have friends that own semi dealerships, car dealerships, things like that. Bounce ideas off of them. See where they are sitting. I also have a friend that used to go in and do consulting, mm-hmm. Financial consulting. He was a forensic accountant. And he would literally go in and analyze the books and see where people were striking out and where they weren't doing so well and everything. So I have some good counsel around me to make sure that I'm being a realist about this, because I love cars. Mm-hmm. Like I do. I absolutely love cars. I like the sounds they make. I like how fast they go. I like the way they look shiny. I find I'm a sucker for black cars right now. But anyway. Mm-hmm. I have to be realistic on that. And then at the same time, I'm an area manager for a mortgage company, a national mortgage company. And so I have those things I need to keep up with as well. So I don't get much sleep.
So if you ever run across a 1947 5-window Chevy with a wooden bed in the back of it, white wall tires, black round body, let me know. It's my dream truck. That or a 1967 Chevelle. Something like that. That'd be legit. So not to get off topic there, but yeah. So Mark, you've had a lot of experience with this in different industries as well. And that's why I wanted to talk to you about that, because it's one thing, we talked last week about, hey, get the realist in your tribe, but having a realist that's maybe had some experience. Like, I don't want to hear from someone that all they want to do is criticize, but they don't have a good, like, what are they doing? If they've not done anything, but they've got all these opinions, but they've got no experience to go with those opinions, I'm not going to weigh those opinions very heavy, right?
Show me the fruits of your labor. Before I give you any weight to your opinion, you can be as negative as you want.
Right.
Like, people sometimes they mistake negativity for being realistic. Hey, I'm just being real with you, man. No, you're not. You're being negative. And this is why you are still where you are.
And we talked about this, right? Because, the realist can come across as a negative person, but you need a realist, especially as an entrepreneur going into starting some new venture or, being a part of something like that. So where you're more, I think you landed more on the motivator side of the aisle, the visionary. It's cool to see that you have that realist side as well, like with what you're doing. So just kind of to tie that to last week, it's important, guys.
You have to slow it down. Yeah. And that's something that I've also noticed with entrepreneurs is depending on where they are in the network of where they need to be and what you need from them, they can typically fill any of those roles. An entrepreneur can fill any of those roles that you need them to fill. Like I come to you and say, Patrick, I need you to be my accountability partner, or I need you to be my motivator. It might seem to you like, well, I guess it depends on what we're motivating at. No, it doesn't, because we can, when it comes to making phone calls or getting to the gym or like improving your life or being a better father or anything like that, you can be a motivator at that. That's not when you're a realist. When you're a realist is when it comes to talking about money.
Practical application,
right? And when it comes to talking finances, that's when you become a realist and you're like a little, I won't say pessimistic. We'll just say, you're even keeled.
Yeah. I love to camp out in the realist camp quite a bit. So, and that can lead to analysis paralysis if you're not careful as well. And we'll go through some of that today. Right. But guys, so we're talking about the hard parts of being an entrepreneur, right? You've got this business that you're going to build. You're going to find yourself wearing multiple hats, at least for a while, until you have the ability to use leverage. Maybe you hire someone, you've got enough revenue coming in, or you're taking a risk there and you're hiring someone based on a certain amount of time, that bleed rate you're talking about.
Right.
You're going to find yourself doing a lot of the work yourself. And so, how do you prevent burnout? That's important. Those are things that you need to consider, but also understand that you can't do it all the time. But also, if you don't get the work done, it falls on you. Like
the hardest thing I had to come to terms with when I was in business, stuff like that, is delegation. Because nobody had the passion I did.
No one can do it with the tenacity that you're going to do it. Replication of yourself is hard.
Right. So you find the things in your life that you can delegate. Your laundry. I have a housekeeper comes to my house once a week, costs me $100. She takes care of my laundry, takes care of my floors, takes care of my bathrooms. Everything stays up. Everything's good. That's $100 well spent to me because I'm still working.
I heard this somewhere, but it's like, do you want to make $10 an hour? You're doing $10 an hour jobs. Why not outsource those?
Right.
Like doing your laundry, doing the housework, doing things like that. And, I'm not knocking any small business owners that clean homes and things like that. No. But, the things that are a lower barrier to entry skill sets that you can outsource them. And that way it gives you more time to work on the business. And so you can prevent that burnout. You have more time and more space for those things.
Plus you're building a referral network if you're hiring a locally owned company.
Like somebody we know. Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, guys, I mean, it's important to think these things through, and how you spend that time matters, and that comes with a cost. It comes with a cost. And so these are things to consider. Mark, do you have any thoughts regarding any of the different types of businesses that you've opened? So we've gone from a staffing agency to real estate to finance to car dealership. Are there any nuanced differences for an entrepreneur to know about given the industry that you're in?
The biggest thing is that you need to truly be in business and be self-sufficient, or I shouldn't say self-sufficient, for it to be profitable. You need to have income happening whether you are putting in the effort or not. What I mean by that is that's what I loved about the staffing agency, is because it was staffing people that were 24/7.
It made money while you were asleep.
It made money while I was asleep. That's why I love being an area manager in the mortgage company. I have LOs under me, and every time they close a loan, I make an override. Right? That's multiplication of effort. I'm able to replicate that. I'm able to help others do what they need to do. And then that takes a little bit of the stress and burden off of me. Then everything I do is just gravy on top. So that's the thing, is that I like things that are more hands off. Mm-hmm. And then I just go find something else to do at that time.
So summarizing that, like you said, multiplication of effort. So for all of you entrepreneurs listening to this, or may listen to this at some point, look at the industry that you're in. How can you set things up to where there's multiplication of effort when you're not even there?
Right.
How can you be making money, or have that money making money for you when you're not around? And owning a business is owning systems and processes, basically, and that are being executed by others, hopefully when you're not there. So otherwise, you don't own a business, you own a job.
Correct.
You own a job. If you don't work, you don't eat, right? So, what we're talking about here is true business ownership. What can you do to use leverage so that you have multiplication of effort, and that cost benefit analysis of the money up front that you use to gain that leverage? What is the return on that investment? Actually, there's a really good book called The Millionaire Real Estate Agent that I read. I think Gary Keller was one of the authors on that book. I think he wrote that. But he uses this red light, green light method. And so what he basically says is, hey, when you spend money on something, that money spent, what was the return on investment? If it was zero, you need to maybe pivot and go somewhere else, And so as you're thinking these things through to build that leverage, to get the multiplication of effort, how are you spending your money? And are you tracking that? Do you have systems in place that measure those things so that you know where to pivot in your business? If you're working with a dull axe, you're going to be chopping on that tree for a long time.
Yeah, it doesn't matter how hard you work. And that, that's a lot of, this outline that you're talking about that you wrote up. That's the very first point, is hard work will not necessarily bring success. Mm-hmm. You can take an axe handle and beat on a tree all day long.
Yeah. And
you can be sore.
Well, and one of my favorite quotes is, if I was given 6 hours to chop a tree down, I would spend the first 5 hours sharpening the axe.
Yeah, absolutely.
I chop that tree down in 1 hour, and that's effectively what you're talking about here with, multiplication of effort. I think that's a huge thing for all entrepreneurs. And one of the biggest mistakes where you see a lot of entrepreneurs fail is they get burned out because they're doing everything, and there's no margin, no margin in their time to do anything else other than work. And I'm not saying that you're not going to work hard, because you're going to work really hard, and You're going to find yourself alone at times working. And, but if you've got a family, there's a balance there. You need to have some time with your family. You need to be able to go in and take that time to be with the people you love. Otherwise, why are you doing this anyway? It's a fruitless effort.
But there will be time at the startup. That's not going to happen. There's going to be sacrifice.
You're going to have to. It's a good point. Sacrifices are key number one. I mean, you walk in understanding that, and this whole, I guess, is really, for me, one of the motivations for doing this particular podcast with this particular topic this week, because a lot of things that are out there right now, they glamorize, oh, look at this billionaire, look at this guy, but they don't show you him sleeping under his desk at the office. They don't show you that he's on marriage number, I don't know, fill in the blank. They don't show you all of that. And, we don't want to see entrepreneurs. We don't want to see business leaders or people leading their family going through multiple divorces and doing all that. But we also want to have reality in check, right? At the end of the day, you have to walk into this idea of being an entrepreneur, understanding that it's not all glamour and it's a lot of hard work. And so, you have to be very intentional.
These relationships here, right?
Say that again.
You're just mentioning these relationships, right?
Yeah.
You're bringing this up. This is exactly what we're talking about here, is why, men are, when they finally do get their business built and then they have worth and then they find a woman. Okay, don't get so flinchy when he mentions a prenup, because guess what? These are the blood, sweat, and tears he put into it. You weren't there to help him through it. You weren't there to help him build it. And he's just making sure that, you're not marrying for that too. I mean, that's probably another subject for another day. Some states have
community property, though, or community property anyway. But I mean, I would advocate rather that you do the work in that relationship up front,
right?
so that the prenup really isn't even needed, because you don't want to be planning a divorce walking into a marriage. But
one can hope that everybody comes into them sincerely, though.
Yeah, well, and I'll tell you, when we decided to go in and open up the Smith Global Group, it took a while for that to happen. But one of the first conversations that was had is I sat down with my wife and we talked through that and what that might look like and what that means. And my first statement to her was, hey, this is what this is going to take as far as I can see. If this isn't okay for you, then I'm not on board either. We either do this together or we don't do it. And we get that alignment. And so, you're building the groundwork for something bigger than yourself. Like, you need that alignment with your family.
Oh, absolutely.
And I would say, if you're an entrepreneur and you're not married and you're getting ready to walk into a marriage, this isn't really a marriage podcast, but this does relate to your entrepreneurship, because your personal life impacts your professional life too. And we want to see you succeed. And so we're talking about legacy here as well. So this is part of your legacy. If you are dating and you're getting ready to marry someone, or you think you could potentially be getting ready to marry someone, having these conversations up front and maybe bringing in, this sounds a little crazy or a little extreme, but there's a lot of wisdom in this. If you find somebody who's measured that can do some premarital counseling with you guys and just sit down, and what they do is they try to pull out red flags that may not even be on your radar, and just sit down and talk through these things. Hey, I'm a business owner. This takes my time. This is what it looks like. This is what this means. You start learning what that other person's expectations are, and you can have that dialogue ahead of time. One of the things, it's really sad to see, but you hear people say, well, they're just not the same person I married. No, that person is still the same person that you married. It's just like every little thing they do you thought was cute now is a little bit more annoying. And so as you're running that business, having these expectations up front is key. So
yeah, we're kind of definitely off on a tangent here, but I agree with you, because personal affects business, business affects personal. It's a symbiotic relationship.
Yeah, and it's in the world of entrepreneurship, like, what happens when you have family working with you in your business? Like, how do you set those boundaries? And so, boy, that is a podcast for another day, but it's something we should probably touch on to do this justice if we're going to do it right. So let's just roll into it. But like, how do those boundaries get set? And I think those expectations coming up front with those people, whether it's your spouse or maybe a child or something in your business, like, these things are important. And as you're a business owner, you're thinking these things through. As an entrepreneur, you're thinking these things through. The time you spend away from family, that has an impact. The time you spend with your family, that has a different type of impact. So as you're thinking through your job as an entrepreneur and what you're set out, whatever that goal is, whatever dream you have, that you've graduated to a vision and now it's some goal, it's developed into something with a timeline and a specific measurable goal of some kind. As you're thinking through those things, if you haven't baked into those goals and into the vision and into the dream, if we reverse engineer that backwards to the beginning, this idea that, hey, how you structure your family and architect life outside of that is going to impact the business as well, because it's a lot of psychological stuff too. And I don't have data to back that up. I think it's more common sense, though. Right. When you're spending time away from family, like, that has an impact. If you decide to marry someone, who you marry can have a huge impact on your success or failure. If you've got somebody who's just toxic, and let's say you don't, how would I word this? Maybe you're just like, well, I should get married. And that's just the box you're checking, as opposed to, hey, I don't want to just get married. This is specifically what needs to happen. This is the kind of person I'm looking for. That's going to bode well for your business better in the long run. So that prenup, we see it in Hollywood. We see it in, all these major tycoons. They have it. I don't necessarily advocate against it. I would just say, for me personally, my personal convictions is that I don't ever want to plan for a breakup with my wife.
I know. I'm with you.
And your story, like, I get where you're at. I'm just, and it's that banter back and forth we have. But
yeah, no, I come into this very jaded.
Well, so, on that side of it, it's important, right? Like, if you do start a business and if you go through a divorce of some kind, it's going to have an impact on the work that you've put in as an entrepreneur.
Definitely is. And the other thing too, we were talking about, you're talking about the time sacrifice and things like that. Now, love him or hate him, Trump. Okay. See this guy make so many like sacrifices. He's the first one up in the morning, the last one to go to bed at night. He sleeps maybe 4 or 5 hours a day.
Have you heard the stories from people who have worked with that guy?
He is an amazing person to work for. That's what I've heard.
I've heard it's like brutal though. Like,
oh yeah, he expects the same thing he does, but he also takes, his people are paid well, they are rewarded well, but he drives. But he does not expect anything from his people that is not willing to do himself. Mm-hmm. That's part of being a leader.
Yeah, I can't remember where this was at. I was listening to something. He has these employees. They'll be working to 8 or 9 o'clock at night, and he'll walk in the office, and they're just frazzled and tired and wore out. They've been there since 6 in the morning, and maybe they've loosened their tie or they're sitting at their table and they just, they're just exhausted. They're not obviously they're not conference room ready in their suit and tie. And he walks in and he says, "Why do you look so awful? You need to tighten it up." And it's 8 or 9 o'clock at night. This person's been grinding for like 15 hours and he's walking in clean cut, perfect suit and tie. I mean, just super squared away and it just toes the line, as an entrepreneur. And that's some next level stuff, right? And you talk about setting the standard in a room. Someone like that, I would imagine working for him, based on the stories I've heard, that he raises the standard in the room very quickly when he walks in the door. Right. And that's what you want to be as an entrepreneur, right? Like you want to toe the line. You got people coming into meetings and they show up 5-10 minutes late. I'm the kind of guy like, hey, you can just leave. Well, no, this is, I'm here. No. You're 5 minutes late. The meeting started 5 minutes ago. You can leave. And that sounds harsh, but that's a standard. That's a standard to be set and to set rather. You don't get much done if you're jacking around. So that's kind of another topic. But
yeah, my kids were all raised on Lombardi time, right?
What's that?
Lombardi time.
Explain that.
15 minutes early is on time. On time is late. Late is unacceptable.
Yeah. So be on time.
They've heard that all their life.
Well, and so, okay, like I'm looking at the downside or the double-edged sword here. So as an entrepreneur, you're running a business and you've got people working for you, right? How strict is too strict? And do you run off help? You don't want to run people off. So people are people too. You got to treat them like people. And there's some reverence and respect to be had. So even as I'm saying like, oh, you're 5 minutes late. Okay. Why are you late? Like explain that. Okay. Well,
if they sent you a text a half hour ago saying, I just blew a tire, I'm going to be a few minutes late. That's different.
That's different. Right.
Than just walking in disrespectfully late just because they lost track of time.
Yeah.
That's they're you have to take everything into consideration.
Yeah. That lackadaisical attitude though is what I'm getting at. So like it's
infectious.
It can permeate the whole business. So you as an entrepreneur, as a business owner, you set the tone in the room. And if you're a leader in your company, maybe you don't see yourself as an entrepreneur. But a lot of companies, at least where I worked in corporate America, everyone that was doing technical work, they were expected to be entrepreneurially minded. So you can actually set the tone in a room if you are, maybe you're not a leader on the team, but you are just an employee. You can set the tone by what you're willing to do. And so that's important as well, right? We can tie that in. That's what this podcast is about leadership and, leaving that good legacy. Your kids watch you, are you doing things on time? Are you doing it with excellence? Like those are things that as an entrepreneur that if you decide, well, I'm just going to roll out of bed at 11:30 in the morning and maybe I'll do a few things and then I'm just going to watch TV, like you're going to fail.
Oh, absolutely. And, just since we've been working together, okay, if like when we have our networking groups or we do things,
right?
If I'm not there already, what's going in your mind? Like something happened.
Where's Mark?
Because the expectation has already been set.
Non-verbally, right?
Just by my actions, I will always be there. Mm-hmm. I will always be early and I will always be there to set things up. I will be on time every time.
But you get these people, they're like, 10 minutes before time. Oh, I'm not going to make it today. Okay. So why? Where are you at?
You should have let me. Yeah, you knew this before 10 minutes before.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And there's that unspoken expectation, but yeah, I mean, it's important. And, having the discipline that there's been a huge push, in business and in life, all these self-improvement gurus, they talk about discipline, but like having that discipline, what's really valuable is when you display that discipline yourself as the leader, the people around you see that. And setting that tone, a lot of times being able to speak less and say more is about the actions you take or the ones you don't. And sometimes you can have a conversation without having to say a word just by the look you give when they walk through the door late.
Yeah, and they just kind of like trill. I'm sorry.
Yeah, that's a thing, right?
It is.
Yeah, that's called self-awareness. Hopefully people have that. But, I personally cannot stand when someone says, well, I'm going to do this. And you're like, okay, I'm going to watch. And I'm not trying to be judgy, but at the end of the day, like if you say you're going to do something, do it. As an entrepreneur, you set a goal. Now if you verbalize that goal, now you're beholden to that goal as well. So, I encourage you to tell your goals to people.
No, absolutely.
It does. It's a subconscious accountability.
Your small
function.
Circle, though.
Yeah. Your trusted network. Let's put it that way. Your tribe. But, having the employees around you as well that follow through with what they say they're going to do.
I really like these things that you wrote up here.
Yeah, actually, so I guess we could get into that. I've prepared
there's
a
number
list
one we
of...
already covered. It's the hard work will not necessarily bring you success. We talked about that with the axe handle, right? Or sharpening the axe. Do not chase a whale and forego the school of fish around you.
Well, real quick. So this is, guys, for the listeners, this is just a list of the 10 things that all entrepreneurs should know. So we'll just go through that, I guess, formally. And so that first one was hard work will not necessarily bring success. So we've hit that. You can work hard, but if you're working with a dull axe, you're not going to chop that tree down very efficiently. But then going into number 2, like Mark said, so...
Yeah, don't chase the whale to forego the school of fish around you. And I've put this in a different analogy is base hits will still score runs. You don't necessarily have to hit home run every time.
Mm-hmm. Base hits will still score runs. What I actually have here is, if you're an entrepreneur and let's say you're in sales or whatever, if you're chasing a big account, my rule of thumb would be that you would have no less than 5 medium-sized to smaller accounts that you're currently working with in your pipeline to go, to match up or marry with that larger account. Because if all you do is chase big accounts all the time and you spend all your time on that, it falls through, you're going to go broke really fast. You're going to go out of business very quickly. So don't be above doing some of the smaller deals. Well, I don't know what that is. If you're selling toothpaste door to door, or you're walking in Walmart and looking for a massive contract that you're going to distribute toothpaste to all of their facilities, the Sam's Club and everything else, whatever that may look like. If you've got a contract with Costco, try to have at least 5 to 10 medium or smaller size deals that you're currently also working so that if the big deal falls through, you are still putting food on the table. You're still providing because you as an employer, your job at that point, you're responsible for those employees. They have livelihoods. They have families. You have a livelihood and a family. Sometimes if you're married, you have kids or, it's people are relying on you. So those smaller accounts, don't be so arrogant as to not take them.
And it's Shark Tank type, right?
What did they say?
They always have, like where have your sales come from? What have you done? Oh, well, internet and Etsy or whatever, right? Mm-hmm. Then the sharks come in and help you land the big whales. That's that's what they do. That's what they're used for. They come in and do that. Once you have a proven concept, once you the rubber's met the road, and you have your costs in line, you have your sources in line, you have things like that. That's where the sharks come in and they help you grow things to the next level. That's when you get to the whale. But a lot of the companies on Shark Tank, you'll see that they're just, it's onesie twosie sales all day long. And sometimes it's 18-hour days putting out onesie twosies, but that's what they do.
That's what they do. And they stay in business. And it's, these medium-sized deals, smaller deals, they can lead to other medium and small size deals. And then those can lead to more deals. And so, working in the real estate industry, for you realtors out there, If you're going for that $10 million property, okay, that's great to get that listing. But what about the $400,000 house, the $200,000 house, the $300,000 house that you sell along the way? That puts food on the table. I'd encourage you to pay attention to that. I don't care if you're doing insurance sales, you're doing real estate. Maybe you have this product, this line of special socks that squeak a funny way and make Christmas music when you walk around. I don't care what it is. Make sure that you're paying attention to the type of customer you have. And to simply put that, don't put all your eggs in one basket. But that's overly simplified, because you should go look for the bigger deals if you can,
right?
As well. And so, to Mark's point, I haven't seen that on Shark Tank, but I have seen Shark Tank, and I see what you're saying.
Right.
Huge deal there. And
we get so spun up in that. And that brings us to number 3, is managing your emotions.
Yeah. So what I have for number 3 is, if you are an entrepreneur and you find yourself in a state of depression, chances are you're spending too much time thinking about the past,
dwelling on things.
Yeah. Did I make the right decision? Should I have stayed in that corporate job? Should I, oh my gosh. And it creates that doubt, and that doubt causes you to live in a state of depression.
Speaking from the heart on this one, aren't you?
Yeah. So some long story. I mean, I was making pretty good money, and made a decision to completely walk away from that. And, I believe in something bigger than myself, obviously with that adoption piece, what we're trying to do there. So
right.
I have my why when I get up in the mornings, and it's something for me where, I don't want to go back to that, and I don't want to second guess, but
right.
So if you're getting depressed, chances are you're spending too much time in the past. Okay. Number 2, if you're getting too anxious and you find yourself riled up, you're anxious, you have a lot of angst, you're probably spending too much time in the future. Now, careful with that. I do advocate for forward thinking, and I advocate that you plan ahead and you think ahead and you be a visionary. I cannot stand dreamer.
Not to the point of anxiety,
concept.
though.
What?
Not to the point of anxiety.
Not to the point of anxiety. And it's, if you're going too far in the future, what about this? We got to get that done. What about, okay, how about, let's just pump the brakes. Let's step back. What do we have in front of us this week? What about this month? Maybe we can work on this month. Let's get through that, and let's get through the next month. Okay. And let's get a few months. Let's get a few reps under our belt. We can have those forward thoughts. We can be thinking in the future. Put a business plan together, guys. I'm not saying just wing it, but don't live so much in the future that it causes anxiety, because you look around and you're like, oh, they're doing this and they're doing that. Well, yeah, okay. You've been in business 1 year and they've been in business, 50 years? Okay. Right. Let's think about that. Let's dial it in and make the main thing the main thing. Let's keep what's important in mind, and let's minimize that anxiety.
Well, and you'll hear me mention my kids a lot, right? Because,
right.
I raised 5 on my own. It was tough. It wasn't easy. Even before my divorce, I was the main person that was investing in their lives. But one thing I always told them was, when they start getting worked up on anything, whether it's homework or whatever, I would ask them, how do you eat an elephant?
One bite at a time.
One bite at a time.
Yeah.
And that's that I just keep rolling back to that. That's what that anxiety piece reminds me of.
Look around you at those guys that are, maybe 20, 30 steps ahead, and let that be your motivation to get up and fight hard.
Yes, absolutely.
But don't let that be anxiety, right? Don't be fueled by fear. So moving on. So number 4, stress test your ideas. So that's more along the lines of count the cost in the beginning, count the cost up front, cost benefit analysis. When you have an idea, you're going to go say, oh, I'm going to open this company, or I'm going to do this thing. Mark spoke to this earlier.
Right.
It's do the work up front to see if it's viable.
Yeah. No, when you overlook that, I will speak to that biting you in the hiney.
Well, and so famous quote by Warren Buffett, you can tell who's been skinny dipping when the tide goes out, right? That's another thing here. Stress test your ideas. So maybe you've had a good idea and you've been successful. And this is really relevant to the season that we're all in right now in business, whether you're in America or anywhere on the globe, because over the last couple years, so I would say probably like mid 2020 all the way through COVID up until probably April of 2022, it was hard to lose money in the stock market. It was hard to lose money. You could make money doing all these different things, and everyone was making money hand over fist, right? Now, here's the thing. These businesses that were doing well, a lot of them, we're going to see who's who in the next several years. And I think I would pose to you probably the next roughly 2.5 to 3 years, we're really getting ready to see who is who in business, because these people that were prudent and wise with their money, and even though it was easy to make money, they were making wise decisions and they were stress testing their ideas. Those people are going to stand the test of time as we go into higher inflation, harder times in business. These people that were prudent and wise, that stress test those ideas, they're going to stand the test of time. And chances are, I'm going to add to Warren Buffett's quote, but those are the entrepreneurs that are going to gain the market share from those that were swimming naked when the tide goes out. In a low tide environment, it's an opportunity for you, Mr. Entrepreneur, if you've made prudent, wise decisions, for you to pick up market share. And so that's the season we're in. And I think we're looking at an exciting time ahead of us. I don't care what industry you're in. Innovate, innovate, innovate. Make the smart idea, make the smart decisions out of your ideas, and really make sure you're stress testing those ideas as you go forward, and never lose that, even when things are good.
Now, we've already referred to this too, like earlier in the podcast. It was run your ideas by a realist after you convert your vision into tangible goals. And this is where we really, really need to be careful, because when we have to, in our group, in our circle, in our tribe that we discussed last week, right? Mm-hmm. That realist that you're running it by, make sure they have some fruit. Make sure that they've built something. Make sure that they've actually done what you're looking to do, not necessarily in the same industry. In real estate, it works, right? You can go get a mentor that's built a real estate empire, or they've done these things. But, maybe you're going into something nobody else has done. And so you want to bounce ideas off of somebody. Just make sure it's somebody that's taken that risk before, or really put it out there before, that you're bouncing it off of, and ask them to be your realist. Ask them to be your mirror, your sounding board. Because
make sure that this is somebody who has walked their talk.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Because I'm a wrestler, right? I'm not going to get coached by somebody that played basketball. Mm-hmm. Not going to work.
Yeah.
Ever.
So as you're stress testing those ideas, find yourself, step one, find a realist who walks their talk.
Yep.
And they've got fruit in their life and in their business that you can see. When they give you words, their words hold weight.
Precisely.
That's what you're saying, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, I agree. And yeah, man, maybe we should have mentioned that last week. When you're building your tribe, having that realist, making sure that they're not just negative Nancy and they have nothing of real value or substance to offer.
Nope.
That's important. Okay. Yeah. That's all I had for number 4. Are you good there?
Yeah, I'm good.
Number 5, I have this one here, and I truly believe this. Your critics can make you millions of dollars. Listen to them. Check your ego at the door. It goes in hand with that realist. Right.
Right. Make sure that they carry something with them. Make sure that they actually have some ammo that they can, put those words out there with.
Well, and even those people who maybe they don't have the fruit there, but maybe they nitpick your blind spots. Take it and receive it, and weigh it, depending upon who it is.
A little different than a business advisor, right?
The way that you implement it is going to be different based on who it is. But, if someone's like, hey, I heard that you say a lot. Well, they're not running a podcast. Hey, I need to stop saying so much, right? That's a real world example of somebody who might be nitpicking.
What you're talking about.
What's that?
I don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah, right. But it's important. It's important to have your critics too. And I think that goes hand in hand with checking your ego too, because as you're more successful as an entrepreneur, your proclivity could be to say, oh, well, you're not, you look around and you're like, man, you're not on my level. Yeah, but maybe they've got some words that if implemented, it would make you better.
Well, just like we took the feedback on because we're not experts on this, guys. And, took feedback from one of our guys in our group, and
we've implemented it.
He said, "Get to it." So we got to it.
Yeah, get to your message faster. Yeah, and that's good feedback, you know. And for me personally, when I have somebody who's a critic, I will just respond, "Oh, really? Okay," and I'll ask questions. Tell me more about that. Well, why do you think that? Well, what is, you know, why do you think that? Well, where did that come from? Well, have you considered this? This is why I do it this way. Does that make sense for this? Or would you still have that criticism? These are things that I respond with, and I'm like, this just makes me better. And that's how I am. And I told you last week, I don't need a cheerleader. I will just drive an initiative forward. But but at the end of the day, like I thrive on the criticism. I would rather have somebody tell me a criticism to my face than to say it behind my back. And if you have a critic willing to do that, keep them close.
Yeah, in love.
Yeah.
In love. Otherwise, they might get smacked.
Well, so either way, your critics can make you a lot of money.
Right. They can.
And they may bring something up that may just be a subtlety that you wouldn't have otherwise had on your radar. So it's still valuable, and check your source.
No, I liked your ideas on this. Make decisions with a decided heart, the traveler's gift.
Number 6,
yeah,
right?
That's what you were getting to. Avoid analysis paralysis and prevent instability in your life and business.
So guys, our number 6 is make decisions with a decided heart. I took that from The Traveler's Gift, and it's a book written by Andy Andrews. Phenomenal book for any entrepreneur looking to just get some words of wisdom, and I highly recommend it. And so you can look that up on, I think Amazon has it on Audible or different places. So I highly recommend it. It talks about making a decision and being firm with that decision. And I saw a meme somewhere, and it had this dead squirrel in a road, right? And the quote on it says, "Be decisive, make a decision. You know, many roads are paved with the dead bodies of squirrels that didn't know which way to run and couldn't decide which way to run." Something to that effect. And it just was funny, but it was so true. And I'm like, when you make that decision, right? And do it with conviction and do it right. I mean, count the cost up front.
You can't do things half-hearted.
Don't do them. Don't do them half-hearted. But when you make the decision and go. Do it. You sit there. You make the decision, you can change your mind slowly. Make your decisions a little more quickly. No, that sounds counterintuitive because you want to do your due diligence and think about things, run the numbers. Yes, I'm not saying don't do that, but make your decisions and run.
But you do that. But once you've done your due diligence, the decisions come quicker.
That's right. If you do the due diligence up front and you seek wise counsel and you have a tribe around you, those decisions actually ironically come quicker.
Yep.
So that's a good one. And so one of the canons or one of the decisions in the Traveler's Guide, I actually have this quote. I'll read this. It says, "Before we can take actions, we need to make decisions. The biggest challenge to decision making is that once the decision is made, we have eliminated other options, so we sometimes hold back. Overcoming what we perceive as a loss will help us move more quickly into a decided heart." So have a decided heart, guys. Additionally, knowing what you are truly passionate about and then following that passion will support your decision-making process. Mm-hmm. And so I just thought that was a really good quote from the book. As an entrepreneur, have a decided heart, make a decision. That's all I have on that one.
Well, and what you've heard the group for King and Country, right?
It's a band, right?
It's a Christian band, right? They have a song called "Burn the Ships," and I love that analogy. Burn the ships. Mm. You know, when they would get someplace, then the early explorers would get someplace. They didn't leave the ship anchored out there. They literally used all the wood and everything, all the materials from that ship. They tore it down and they built their shelters. They had they had to make it there. That was the failure was not an option. Mm-hmm. And I really like that analogy. Burn the ships. Get rid of your parachute. Let's go.
Yeah, that it's an analogy back to war times, right? And so I'm trying to think. I think it was the movie Troy. I might be wrong. they sail in to do war, right?
Mhm.
And they park their boats on the shore and they burn their ships and they look at their warriors and they say, "This is it, guys."
Yeah, that was Troy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so, to Mark's point, if you're going to do this, do it. That's it. There's no other option. Get in there and do it. Have wise counsel, count your costs up front. But once you've done that, decide it hard. So that's number 6. Number 7, make a plan and count the cost up front. We've hit on that. So this involves doing research, talking with others and seeking wisdom, putting together a budget for your time and your finances with an assigned timeline for each. So just as much as you think about the money, think about the time it's going to take, right? Assign a value to that. That's all I have. I don't want to beat the dead horse on that.
Right.
Number 8 is pay attention to the rules so that you know how to break them properly.
Right. And I really think that, there are certain things that are unbreakable. Integrity, caring for people, you're not stealing, you're not being dishonest. You're like, there are certain things that those are rules that are not to be broken. I think we're talking more like Pirates of the Caribbean guidelines, right? Those are more like guidelines.
You don't want to break tax laws, right? You learn those. And there's benefits to understanding tax deductions and things like that. But I guess a real world example that I would give is, and you're exactly right, never compromise your honor and your integrity and how you do business. So when I say break the rules, that's got a negative connotation to it. But what I'm really saying here is there are systems and processes, and really this can apply if you're in a corporate America job. You're going to have systems and processes and guidelines and things that they have in place for a reason. And chances are the reasoning comes from a context of something that they learned, something that happened over time, and that's why those things are in place the way they are. But ever so often, you're going to run across a scenario where those rules don't apply, but you're beholden to those rules. And so having the wherewithal to stand up and say, hey, I'm going to break that rule this time. And in breaking that rule, how do you do that right? How do you do that without compromising trust and character and all those things? Go to your boss and be transparent. Don't be secretive about breaking those rules. Go to your employer, go to your boss and say, hey, we have this rule in place. This thing over here is happening. We really need to go about this a different way for this particular reason. I'm advocating that we make an amendment to that rule or we tweak it. Do I have your permission to do that? Here's why. Here's the value add for breaking that rule, things of that nature. And do that in a way that it's more of a partnership with the people that you're beholden to, right? If you have investors in your company and you've got rules that you've established and guidelines that you're getting ready to break, be transparent about those things. Talk about those things, give the reasoning behind it, give the natural conclusion to what breaking those rules is going to lead to. If it leads to something that's unethical, don't break the rule, but understand and pay attention to the rules so that you know how to break them properly. Sometimes they need to be broken. And if you put yourself in a box as an entrepreneur, you take away all your creativity and you box yourself in. You don't want to do that.
No, not at all. Not at all.
So that's all I had for that one.
All right. Do not obsess over what competitors are doing.
Number 9, do not obsess over what competitors are doing, guys. Yeah. I'm not opposed to paying attention to what others are doing, and I don't like reinventing the wheel. So if something works well and a competitor's doing it, do it, implement it. That's fine. But if you're always looking at what they're doing, what so-and-so's doing, what so-and-so's doing, you're always going to be at least 1 to 2 steps behind them. So, okay, let's look at what they're doing, but also let's be forward thinking about our own business.
Let's get some innovation going. Right?
Innovation, right? I don't care about, well, they're spending X amount of dollars over here. I don't care about that. If they're doing something and they have found, okay, well, statistically speaking, this works better than this. Okay, yeah, let's implement that. That's fine. But where we're steering our ship, it shouldn't be contingent upon where everyone else is sailing. You think about investments in life, right? If everyone's throwing their money into a certain investment and you come in, well, everyone else is doing that, so you're already late. You're late. Why not do the due diligence and put the work in up front to actually go in and say, hey, I want to be one of the first ones there.
Right. And it's let's just use the Pepsi Coke competition thing.
Okay,
for instance, right in the 80s, 90s, right?
I haven't heard this one, so I'm intrigued.
So it was constant one-upmanship in commercials, in television commercials.
Mm-hmm.
But after a while, it just got diluted. Right? They were constantly trying to, like,
when you say diluted, like their marketing, or
like everybody just got tired of hearing it. It just it didn't have, it lost its effectiveness.
It's like politics season.
So right, exactly. So like if people hear too much of it, or the competition's on TV, or they're running a Super Bowl ad, well, we need to get in there and do that. Maybe you should do something different. Maybe you need to think outside the box, because that dilutes your message as much as theirs. And there might be a way that you can set yourself apart differently.
How many millions of dollars would it cost to do a 30-second ad on the Super Bowl?
10 million.
And could I have the same reach with half the dollars, utilizing social media as a leverage point instead?
Correct. Yeah.
Something like that.
It's an impact position, right?
Yeah.
So
that's a great point, Mark.
Yeah, it just gets diluted.
All right, moving on to number 10 here. Number 10, follow through on your words and establish a solid reputation. Guys, that
was podcast number 1. Number 1, word.
Oh, watch what you say.
Mm-hmm.
If you say you're going to do something, do it. If you've got a customer, a client, you tell them, hey, this is going to happen. I'll do this. Do it. And
if it's not going to work, you better be man enough to use your words to communicate why, and own up to it, not just like ghost it.
Get ahead of it.
Right.
Yeah. For you entrepreneurs that, let's call you a small business, and let's say you're competing against the big boy. The big boy has the edge in the sense that they've got more resources. Maybe they've got more money. They've got more resources. How do you compete with that?
Exactly.
How do you compete? I tell you how you compete. You get in front of that client and you say, yeah, you can go with them, but I'm going to custom tailor this plan for you. This is what we're going to do. This is what we're going to do. This is what we're going to do. And by the way, we're going to do it by this time on this date. If you do it, but you do it a week late, you've not brought any value to that client. In fact, that client probably would have been better off going with the big boy and just keeping it simple. But you have an edge as a small business entrepreneur. You can get out there. You can be very intentional with what you say, follow through with what you're going to do, build the credibility and build the trust. And everyone around is like, hey, have you heard of that Mark guy? You heard of that Pat guy? Those guys, man, when they tell you they're going to do something, they do it. And then they actually do double what they said they were going to do. That's like, you need to go do with, like, yeah, I know you're going with so-and-so. You need to go talk to these guys. Just trust me. Yeah, they charge a little more, but my goodness, you're going to get what you pay for. And they're just going to do it like 5 times better than the big boy over there, because that big boy can't move as fast. These guys do what they say they're going to do.
Well, and this just reminds me of something came out this weekend. And I know that we have this other thing. I think maybe we should do the Harvard Business, a link because I think this is a very important topic. You're talking about doing it bigger, doing it custom tailored. So there's a new movie just came out on Amazon called Air.
I haven't heard of that yet.
It just came out this weekend.
Okay.
I watched it, brought me to stinking tears. Okay.
What's the premise?
It's Michael Jordan's story of how Nike landed him.
I have heard of that.
And it is stinking amazing. Like, I was literally in tears. His mama negotiated that contract for him. His mom is the reason he's making $400 million a year right now from Nike. His mom is the one that set the precedence for the rest of the athletes after that. You know who the 2 leading basketball shoe companies were before Nike signed Jordan?
Let me guess. I don't know. Blind guess. Don't beat me up, guys, if I'm wrong. Was it either Reebok or like an Adidas or something?
Adidas, Converse.
And Converse. Okay.
Adidas and Converse.
Okay.
They had the Converse All-Stars, Adidas. And this guy played by Matt Damon. I don't even remember the guy's name, or the character's name in the movie, but this was the true story of how all this happened. He literally broke the rules. He broke the rules.
How did he break the rules? Let's break that down first.
The agent told him, do not call that family. Do not call. He didn't call him. He went there. He went to North Carolina.
So he did technically call him. He just knocked on the door.
He went and knocked on the door.
Okay.
And he literally sat there and predicted to Michael Jordan's mother what the sit downs with Adidas and Converse were going to look like and why. And he was showing so much wisdom in his business and everything else. I mean, there's so much to glean from watching that movie that I highly suggest anybody that's in business, wants to be in business, whatever, just go in there and look at that and look at the tenacity he had and just like the raw emotion and the commitment to that. And, you know, the guy that, down to the guy that designed the shoe. And, you know, Adidas had this whole line of shoes out in all these different colors. And Converse did the same because Converse had the All-Stars.
So big boys.
The big boys. And
so Nike comes in.
The Chucks, right? They're the Chuck Taylors. Uh-huh. And Nike comes in and they have one shoe. Red, white, and black. And they said, well, according to the NBA, the shoes have to be 51% white. And they said, yeah, that's a $5,000 fine per game we're willing to pay. But it also...
They broke the rules.
They broke the rules. And then it also said, but your family's name will carry on in infamy. Air Jordan.
So that personal touch, doing what you say you're going to do. So equating that back to number 10, follow through on your words and establish a solid reputation. So they go in, they knock on the door, instantly, you know, instant credibility, personal touch.
But it took a while to get like, I mean, you should have heard the screaming matches on. I mean, you have to watch this movie. The agent calling, I can't believe you crossed I told you not to call. Well, technically I didn't call. I went there. You know the difference. Like it was so funny. And he said, and the agent was like, either I'm gonna hate you when this is done, or we're gonna be best friends. And
you think they're still friends today?
I don't know.
Or you're talking about the guy who went and got Jordan with the shoe, the sponsor.
Agent, no, the agent is the one that said we're either gonna hate each other when this is done, or we're gonna be best friends.
And he said that to who?
To Matt Damon, the guy that got the sponsorship.
Okay, so the guy working for Nike and the agent for Jordan
were butting heads.
Ah, okay,
yeah,
I gotcha.
So this whole thing just happened, and the agent said, you know, I'll build this up to be 100 million. You know, I'll build this up to be a big company, big agency that I'm going to sell it off. And Matt Damon says, yeah, and you're probably going to go eat dinner alone too. And he did. He sold his company for $100 million. At the end, you know, they give all the facts. He sold his company for $100 million and went and ate alone that night. Because that was what his passion, that's what was all he was about. So balance. So many lessons to be taken from that movie. So many.
Well, I'm gonna have to go watch that now. That's interesting. It sounds like a lot of the stuff that we're hitting on here today, it covers a lot of it. I mean, this last point about that personal touch and your words matter. You know, do what you say you're gonna do. Follow through with that. Don't be somebody, you know, talk is cheap, right? You listen to somebody and you're like, man, they're just running their mouth. You know, what is it about those people that when they speak, others just sort of perk up and they listen? They're like, man, that person is solid. Like they carry some weight.
Right.
What, you know, when you think of those people in your life, who are they and what is it about them? And, you know, as an entrepreneur, as a business owner, when you're building your business and you're looking to get these clients, that's the edge that you can provide. Yep. That's what I'm getting at with number 10.
Exactly. The one other point I'll bring up when we can close out.
Yeah.
But Patrick Knight, he was the owner, the guy that started Nike. Uh-huh. He's the CEO of Nike.
Patrick Knight. Nike was $1 billion company before they signed, and they were just running shoes. But before they signed Jordan, they were $1 billion company. To date, Patrick Knight has given $2 billion just to charity. Since he signed Michael Jordan. Versus the guy who sold his company for $100 million and ate alone. Guys, why are you in business? What are you doing, right?
Yep, do it.
It's important. You got to have your why. Hey, that's all I had today. We've got went and looked up some other information. I'll post it. Mark alluded to it, but there's a Harvard Business Review article, and it talks about, the different attributes of a good entrepreneur. So we'll post that as well. If you're interested to read that, it'll be there. Guys, if you like what you saw, follow us on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube. Hit the like button on YouTube. Please follow us and subscribe. We want to get the word out. So thank you for tuning in and passing it out.
See you next week.